Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 4 from the 2023 World Chess Championship match. Ding Liren has the white pieces in this one and trails 1 point to 2. Let's have a look. Opening wise in English. First time we're seeing this in the match. And an interesting start to this Game 4. Queen c2. This had me fooled in a way. I thought to myself, you play queen c2 so that you can meet bishop takes knight, the move played in the game, with queen takes bishop. But that's not the decision by Ding Liren. Instead, it's b takes. So 6 moves in, 2 imbalances, one with the structure, the other with the minor pieces. We have an unopposed dark square bishop. Black now needs to take some care over the dark squares. Stay strong on the dark squares. I should mention that there's nothing wrong with recapturing with the queen. It's just white's looking to create more imbalance in the position with b takes c3. In fact, in this game, we're following a game by Ding Liren's second, Richard Rapport, from over a decade ago. And we deviate from that game on move 11. So from here, the follow-up is d6, staying strong on the dark squares, not going 2 for 2 reasons. One, you're welcome to undoubling white's c-pawns, and another, how are you going to get castled? This bishop is going to be a real pest on a3. All right, so it's d6. White follows up with e4. So this is an instructive moment early on. The central pawn play. e4 first. If you make a decision with the d pawn on this move 7, with let's say d3 or d4, both moves can be met with e4. Even in this position, as a pawn sacrifice. What's the compensation exactly? Well, these guys aren't looking so bright. There's a square also opened up for the queen knight all of a sudden after e4. There is compensation here for black. White says, no, I'm not even going to allow you to play e4. I'm playing e4 myself. And in playing in this way, you're also retaining some option with the d pawn. Maybe 1, maybe 2 squares. Okay. Black castles. Where should this pawn go? Nowhere. Just yet. Bishop to e2. If you try to play with this pawn right now, you're asking for trouble. Your king is still in the center, and we would have these tricks. Knight takes e4. Pin and win of the queen if you take the knight. Okay, so not so fast. Let's first get a developing move in. Bishop e2 it is. Knight h5. Tactics check. This knight is unprotected. Is it tactically vulnerable? Not quite. Play follows with d4. If white tries to take advantage of this unprotected knight, well, this will fail. Knight takes e5 is losing for white. After knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, there would follow this nice double attack, queen g5, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. Black is winning this position. Okay, no knight takes e5, d4 on board, going 2, increasing the pressure on e5, creating more tension, putting pressure on the dark squares, opening up the bishop's eyes as well to defend against knight f4. The knight hops in, knocked out. No more imbalance with regard to the minor pieces, but yet another imbalance regarding the structure. Couple instances of doubled pawns in this position, as well as a change with the central majority. It's tipping in white's favor now, 2-1. This e-pawn is now live, has a legal move. Okay. Castles. So as mentioned, we followed this game by Ding Liren's second Richard Rapport. On this move 11, Rapport played h4. In this game, it's castles. Okay. From here, queen f6, rooks get to the e-file, bishop d3, bishop g4. In a way, black was waiting for white to play bishop to d3. You don't play rook here, and you're not satisfied continually staring at the bishop. You want this guy to eventually get out of the way so the rook can see the e-pawn. Black was waiting for bishop d3 to next play this and put pressure on f3. This square is a bit of a concern for white. You have to make sure you have a good reply to black playing f3. The reply here is knight d2. So what's going to happen if f3 is played? In the game, black goes with knight to a5. What's happening after f3? How should you reply to f3? g3 is a good reply, with the idea to next go hunting for the pawn. Rook e3, queen to d1, and white has 3 on it, and I don't believe there's a way to hang on to this point. So not so fast with this disrupting type move. You have to be on the lookout for these moves that punch holes into your king's position. You know, there are these ideas to try and sneak in for mate, but this guy is always around to defend g2. In any case, no f3, g3 would be a good reply. In the game, it's knight a5. From here, now c5. So these next moves are really changing the character of the position. The structure changes, the material changes. There's a lot to factor in. We're going to end up with the stranded knight on a5 as well. It's a positional pawn sacrifice, this c5 idea. And in how much time was spent on this? About 11 minutes, weighing the pros and cons. Okay, c5, d takes c5. Now the e-pawn is ready to go. There's no longer as much control over the e5 square. It's currently a 2-0 majority in the center for white right now. e5 hits. The battery is unleashed on h7. That's defended. The queen, she was also under fire. And now in comes d5. 2 invasive pawns, very lively position, a stranded knight, but it's still considered roughly equal. From here, rook gets to the d-file, c4, very strong center. How do you break this down exactly? Also, how do you activate this knight? So there's this space advantage that white has clearly with this 5th rank duo, and a knight that's struggling to find a productive role in the game. This really is not an inconvenience for white to watch over c4. There's plenty of defense there. The queen is soon to pivot on c3, put pressure on the knight, watch over the center. This is a struggling piece. This is where some of the compensation lies with the pawn sacrifice. It's going to take some time now to activate this knight. Black does find a good way to activate it, though. From here, it's b6, a step in the direction of helping the knight. There's now at least a square on b7. And where does it go from b7? Well, there's still more work to be done. From here, h3. Not so fast. This move was not played so fast. About 15 minutes spent on h3. You have to make sure there isn't going to be any crazy sacrifice. You know, the two, knocking out 2 pawns for the bishop. In the game, the bishop backs off to h5. These sacrifices are not working. there's one invasive piece and there's not a way to tie in another with her. This guy is no problem. How could white reply? If there was this sacrifice, there's many approaches. Here's one simple way. You could give the queen a kick and then direct your pieces on f3, both minor pieces, basically. Once the knight is on f3, there's no concern whatsoever for white. Rock solid on the king's side. Okay, so no good to take the pawn. No sacrifice there is working for black. It stays on this diagonal. It's trying to be irritating to both the knight, who would like to maybe play to f3, and the rook, who would like to maybe go to e2 so that the rooks can double along the e file. This is why we're having h3 instead of f3. By playing h3, you still keep open the option to go to your favorites. The knight has access to its favorite square still. Takes some work to get there, but it's still an option. If you're giving the bishop a kick with the f-pawn, forget about getting there with the knight. So it's h3, bishop h5, bishop e4. Looking to challenge this bishop one day with bishop to f3. Notice how the bishop tries to get there. He's not just flipping a coin. Do you go to e4 or e2 into this square? No. If white played to e2 right now, that hangs the e5 pawn. Rook takes pawn. It's bishop to e4 in this position. Rook takes pawn in this position is poison because there would be the shot. Bishop takes h7 and the rook falls. So e5 is indirectly defended. From here, rook e7, quite a bit of time spent on this last move by Nepomniachtchi. Move 20, nearly 20 minutes on move 20. Rook e7, what's the idea? He has an eye on e5. Soon, all major pieces, all of black's major pieces will be directed on this point. How should white go about defending? Let's see. First is queen c3. The rooks are doubled. Bishop f3. Knight b7. Rook e2. It's paving the way. Bishop f3 is paving the way for white to now reinforce e5. From here, we have now f6. There's only one good move now for white, and it's to play e6. Why is black allowing white to have now a connected passed pawn? Well, this guy needed a square. So f6 is pulling this pawn away from defending d6. The knight is now activated. This knight was once a worst piece, and now it's looking more like a best piece in the whole position for white or black. This is a best piece. Nice pressure on c4, nice blockader of any pawn advances. A really fantastic piece. Can't be kicked away. There's no dark square bishop to bother it. Really can't say enough about this guy right here. Very valuable. Okay, from here, rook a to e1, knight f5. This is a good square for the knight, but black has an eye on another square d4. That is a hole in white's camp. Bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and now white is targeting f4. It's defended with queen h6, not just to any square. You could go to g5, h6, but by going to h6, you're in a spot to have g5 in there. This guy is free to move. White piles up on f4. And now we have on board knight to d4. Pop quiz. What move would you play in this position as white? Feel free to pause the video. Okay. If you take the pawn we would have an exchange of queens and an evenish endgame. Nepomniachtchi overlooked something, though. This is a losing move. There's an exchange sacrifice. Rook takes knight. Pawn takes rook. White is winning this position. What was best in this position is to defend f4 with g5. With the continuation g4, and then it says go back to this square on d6. Going to d4 would yet again be asking for an exchange sacrifice. Why is this exchange sacrifice so good? Let's see. Knight b3 is the follow-up. This knight is ready to collect the pawn and soon morph into like a 7-point knight. Getting to c6, maybe to f5. Both are devastating posts, and these rooks are not even really felt in this position. The structure alone, White's structure alone, this construction is negating both black rooks. It, in a way, feels like White is playing up a knight and rook. It's really bad for black. Play follows with g5. One important variation to note here is that trying to hang on to this point, d4 with c5, you could capture. This is considered good for White, but even better, clearer to understand is this one here. After c5, White would be able to play d6, and there's no stopping this guy, really. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook, rook takes rook. d7, how are you stopping this guy? Rook d6 would result in a mate in 2. Queen a8, queen e8, game over. So, there's no hanging on to this pawn. There's no stopping this knight from getting to d4. And once he's on d4, he's just out of control, active. So what's tried is g5, knight takes pawn, queen g6. This is probably the more irritating square, a knight on f5 rather than c6. Why is this? It's closer to the king. Ties in well, a little bit better on the king side. Takes away more squares from the rook. That's on the 7th rank. Okay. White wants to have a support point for the knight, preferably with a pawn, so he shoots for that with g4. Black takes on g3 en passant. F takes g3. The queen is now there to support knight f5. There's no stopping it. He's in there. This is completely winning, and black has to make very sad moves at this stage. He simply overlooked in this game the exchange sacrifice. Rook h7, some attempt to crack open White's kingside with g4 is not working. White could continue with queen e4, and there's no time to make a capture because White has a threat to take the rook and then the queen. Next up, there's h4, locking the kingside down completely. Okay, from here, rook h7, queen e4, out of any tricks to break open the kingside. Still with a threat to go to e7, even though this time it wouldn't be taking a rook. We're ready to win the queen. Gets out of the check with king h8. And from here, e7. Cuts off the rook from defending this pawn. Queen f7. I was having some fun in many positions in this during the live stream with this game. I was pointing out all these different king walks that are available. There are many approaches to this position right here. It's a completely dominant knight. This knight is controlling all major pieces. Black is confined to this quadrant with all of these pieces, and You could go for some king walk all the way up here, grab the pawn, and then push here. It looks like, can you really do that? Do you have the time? Isn't there something black can do? Not really. If you really wanted to take a slower approach, you could go in that way. That's how terrible this position is. That's how dominant this knight is. Trying to stop the king from getting to this square. There's ways to undermine the structure with a5, and this pawn is pulled away. These guys could march. Okay, a lot of different approaches. Ding Liren's approach is much more direct. He carries on with d6 straight away. No long-winded king walks or anything like that. He's pressing on. He's ready to play d6. Black takes. Have to get rid of that pawn duo. Knight takes d6. He's getting the material right back, and he's seeing this position where the black queen ends up as the blockader on e8. And she can't move. She's stuck. In the game, it's queen g8. Capturing on e7 is met with knight takes rook. This is winning for white. So it's queen g8, knight takes rook, queen e6, some defensive f6. This is tempting, but rook d1 right now. There's king g6, and there's a threat here. So a little finesse by white. First rook f1. In a way is demoting the rook. It's moving forward, but it's not as aggressive. It's no longer going to be there to exert pressure on the pawn. So only after rook f1 and rook h6 does the rook go to d1. Looking at this, f5, attacking the queen, check, check, queen h7 check, queen g7, and what do you do here as black? The threat here is to give the king a kick, win the rook. Not many options for black at this point. What's tried is rook g6, queen f8, move 47. That's the last move of this game for black resigns. What do you do here? Considered best is rook g8. White has a good reply to that. You take the rook. Queen takes queen. There's only one winning move, and you could be sure white has it worked out. Rook d8. Next up, you're promoting with check. Nothing to do here for black. No queen move with a check. No perpetuals to worry about. This one's over. So a really big miss. The exchange sacrifice there. Rook takes knight. White knight on f5, a real powerhouse. Okay, with this win, it really shakes this match up. It's now level 2-2. 4 games in, 2 draws. How did it go? Draw, win, draw, win. I think there's more wins coming up for this match, so we will see. Let's have a look at the tail of the tape. We can see just how machine-like these guys were playing up until move 28. Then we had an issue. Knight d4 was the big mistake, allowing the exchange sacrifice. I didn't mention this. They only spent, on the move knight d4, Nepomniachtchi spent about 2 minutes. In Ding Liren's reply, he only spent about a minute with the exchange sacrifice. In the end, registering a 98% accuracy. Ding Liren coming back in this game 4. This is really big. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.